U.S. State Department was forced to condemn statements by Israeli ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir on an Israeli plan to relocate masses of Palestinians to other Arab nations or to the Sinai Peninsula, the kinds of claims of ethnic cleansing that defenders of Palestinian rights have been arguing was happening for weeks now. In a translated tweet announcing his thoughts, Smotrich wrote, "More than 70% of the Israeli public today supports a humanitarian solution of encouraging the voluntary immigration of Gaza Arabs and their absorption in other countries, understanding that a small country like ours cannot afford a reality where 4 minutes away from our settlements, there is a hotbed of hatred and terrorism. We're 2 million people who wake up every morning with aspiration." And here's Gvir saying the quiet part out loud.
את קידום פתרון של עידוד ההגירה של תושבי עזה אנחנו חייבים לקדם. זה פתרון נכון, צודק, מוסרי, הומני. אני קורא לראש הממשלה ולשר החוץ החדש, שאני מברך אותו כאן. זה ההזדמנות לרכז עכשיו פרויקט הגירה, פרויקט של עידוד הגירתם של תושבים מעזה אל מדינות העולם. שלא נטעה, יש לנו פרטנרים ברחבי העולם שאנחנו יכולים להסתייע בהם. יש אישים ברחבי העולם שאנחנו יכולים לקדם איתם את הרעיון הזה. עידוד הגירה של תושבי עזה יאפשר לנו להחזיר הביתה את תושבי העוטף ואת תושבי גוש.
Now, these comments from Israel's national security minister drew harsh criticism from the U.S. State Department officials who wrote, "The United States rejects the inflammatory and irresponsible statements from Israeli ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. There should be no mass displacement of Palestinians from Gaza."
Senator Bernie Sanders also weighed in on the conflict, posting on Twitter, "Let me be clear, no more U.S. funding for Netanyahu's illegal, immoral, brutal, and grossly disproportionate war against the Palestinian people. Congress must reject any effort to pass $10 billion of unconditional military aid for the right-wing Netanyahu government." Sanders' comments come as Netanyahu has expressed his desire for Alan Dershowitz to represent Israel at the genocide trial coming up soon. Alan Dershowitz, a frequent guest on our show. Let's start with Bernie Sanders. Is it just my perception, correct me if I'm wrong, that he has reversed course somewhat to being more vocal in his condemning of Netanyahu and being against additional funding? He previously said something about how there shouldn't be a ceasefire or couldn't be.
Well, the funding issue and the ceasefire issue are different issues. He has throughout offered pushback to the dollars that have been going out of the door to substantially fund the bombing campaign against Gaza, and has long, for most of this conflict, been an advocate of putting conditions on aid to Israel such that it cannot be used to commit any war crimes. Now, that's already a law that exists, but it's a law that we turn our heads the other way for when it comes to Israel. So he's been trying to get that enforced, but he has declined to call for a ceasefire, despite that. That line, whatever that is inscrutable to so many leftists and has gotten him a lot of criticism. I think the big issue here, the big story, is that Israeli leadership has been saying things that seem to announce their intent here and what their aims are for Gaza throughout this conflict. We've gone over and over some of those early statements about human animals and how we have to turn Gaza into a parking lot. But now it seems like the tenor of those remarks from people who are so senior, like Ben-Gvir, expressly saying that the plan is to definitionally cleanse Gaza, to say that the 2.3 million people who live there cannot live there anymore. They have to be shuttled off to neighboring countries that have absolutely nothing to do with this conflict, is textbook ethnic cleansing, such that I think it really coerced out of the State Department finally a statement that says we're not going along with this. Now, the pushback to the State Department's statement has been, well, this is not new news. And you are now putting out a statement saying that this is inappropriate behavior and that we don't condone it, at the same time that you are continuing to fund and to provide weapons for exactly this kind of behavior. So what this really does seem to be is an optics battle where the United States would really like Israel to stop announcing its violation of international law quite so loudly because of the obvious way that it's implicating our own State Department.
I mean, the plan is also a non-starter because no Arab nation actually wants to accept the Palestinians. There's nowhere for them to go.
Because they don't want to participate in ethnic cleansing. And so many of them have already taken so many Palestinians in the first place. When the Nakba happened in 1948, for example, Lebanon ended up taking eventually 300,000 Palestinians, for instance. And so they've already shouldered a lot of this refugee burden. The reason that Hezbollah even exists is because of a resistance movement out of the Palestinians who were pushed into Lebanon after the Nakba, and who were politicized after the 1982 Israel-Lebanese war.
Yes. Given that Gaza has been destroyed, I think it would be ideal if they would take even more. And I will point out that what the statements by the officials were a voluntary migration, not a forced relocation that would count as ethnic cleansing. You can say that's BS, and what they really want is to forcibly do it, and they're giving them no other choice because they're destroying Gaza.
I would say that.
And that's fine, and I wish that hadn't happened too. It has happened, and I can't imagine these people living there, and so it would be better if they could go to Arab countries at this point, would it not?
If I blew up your house, would it be a voluntary eviction?
No, but I would probably go live somewhere else, wouldn't I?
Right. So the obligation of the international community is not to validate Israel's illegal actions or to validate their illegal occupation. It is interesting that I think it was Ben Gvir's statement, he referenced Israeli settlements and how dangerous it is for Israelis to have to live in proximity to Palestinians in their settlements. Those settlements are illegal and have been deemed illegal by the United Nations and any other international law authority that you want to point to. And there are hundreds of thousands of people who have occupied these settlements in the West Bank and who have been spending the last 3 months since October 7th, ratcheting up violence against the Palestinian population there, killing hundreds of Palestinians, again, in this part of the world where Hamas is not in political leadership or control at all. So the irony of saying that illegal settlements have to be protected from the people who have a legal right under international law to live there by expelling them from the country is pretty grotesque as well. It's worth mentioning that this isn't the only statement of this sort that has been going around. Recently, we had another member of the Likud party, that's Netanyahu's party, who, again, articulated this, frankly, violation of international law. We've been making this argument that there has been collective punishment, which is a violation of international law, where you deny food, water, et cetera, medical supplies to an entire population in order to meet your political aims. This woman, Tali Gottlieb, said, without hunger and thirst among the Gazan population, we will not be able to recruit collaborators. We will not be able to recruit intelligence. We will not be able to bribe people with food, drink, medicine in order to obtain intelligence. We know that finding the abductees is a supreme and a super important goal alongside the goals of fighting. So basically saying, yes, we're doing collective punishment for these strategic goals, self-described strategic goals. Whatever rationale you want to give to it, it's these admissions over and over again that there are these violations of international law, which is why people are saying that this South Africa bringing Israel before the International Criminal Court is a really compelling move, because unlike in most cases where you're trying to prove genocide or ethnic cleansing or collective punishment, Israeli officials themselves have been saying pretty loudly, yes, this is what we're doing.
All right. Thank you for that update. More Rising right after this.